Good morning. Welcome to Leadership Live with Anton Gunn. And today we're talking about your leadership goals in 2025. My first question for you, have you set your leadership goals for you and your team in 2025? Now, I'm not talking about your personal goals or the goals in which you want to achieve for yourself, and you should have done those at the end of the year. Maybe you did them through New Year's resolutions. Maybe you did them in some kind of formulaic process to put your goals in place of what you want to accomplish in 2025. I'm not talking about those goals. I'm talking about what goals have you set for you and your team at work. Most of us don't work in isolation. Most of us don't work by ourselves. At some point in time, we are attached to a team, and that team has work that needs to get done in 2025. And so my question is, have you set your goals to align your team for maximum impact in 2025? Now, I want to talk about that today, but let me tell you what's going to happen if you don't set your goals for your team in 2025. You will literally be like a ship with no rudder. See, you can put a ship in the water or a boat in the water, whatever you want to put in the air, and not have any kind of guidance to it, no rudder to direct it anywhere. And that ship might get out of the dock, but chances are it won't ever get out of the dock, because you can have all of the power in the world, but without a direction, without a game plan, without something to guide whether you go left or right, or should I say port or starboard, whether you go forward or backwards, you won't get far. And your team won't get far. It'll lead to a frustrated group of people who are feeling like they are less than capable of success because they don't know where they're going, what they're doing, and what's the direction. They don't have any of that. And it's up to you to set that vision, to set that alignment, to set that clarity, to set that framework. It's up to you, because without it, some people will quit your team. They will walk away from you, walk away from everything that you think that you are going to do this year, because you just gave people some platitudes or some quote unquote words of encouragement around doing the work, but didn't really give people a game plan. So today we want to talk about, how do you align your vision? How do you set your goals for 2025? And I don't have a whole lot that I need to share with you today, because this should be crystal clear. If you think you're a leader, if you call yourself a leader, if you have a title or a position or office or something on your signature line in your email, maybe on a business card that says something that looks like a leadership position, you should know how to do this already. But I know some of you don't. Some of you have never been taught. You've never been trained. You've never been prepared with good leadership in front of you. So you repeat the bad habits of leaders that you work for. Or maybe you don't get enough reinforcement on the good habits, so it's easy for bad habits to creep in. So today we're going to talk about, how do you align your team for maximum impact? How do you set leadership goals as a team and as a group that puts your team and you in position to be successful? And there are 4 things I'm going to cover today, 4 simple things. And I'm going to give you an action step that if you really want to take things to the next level, this would be a great way for you to take those things to the next level. Particularly your planning, your goal setting, your vision, your ethics, all of those things. If you want to go to the next level, stay tuned to the end, and I'm going to give you that. So now let's jump right in with how do you set leadership goals and how should you set them this year if you want your team to have maximum impact on what's set before you as a business or organization or entity who has something to achieve. So the first thing you need to understand that you have to start with a vision. Now, I've shared this with you before. Let me explain to you what a vision is. A vision is a detailed mental picture of a desired future state. A detailed mental picture of a desired future state. Now, I want you to focus on two words. The first one is detailed, and the second one is picture. Detailed mental picture of a desired state. So I want you to focus on the words detailed because I want you to know that your vision has to be crystal clear, that people can see the finer details in the vision. The second thing is a picture. Now, when I say picture, it doesn't have to be a vision board, which would be nice, but it needs to be what that future state looks like and that everybody knows what it looks like. That picture could be a chart or a graph. People need to know what the success line looks like. Like if you go back to football, now I'm a football guy, played football in college, been playing football most of my life, but I haven't done it in a very long time, like 30 plus years. But here's what I want you to understand about the football field. The game is played between the end zone line. So there's 100 yards between one end zone and the other. And so that's where you do all your strategy. You're back and forth, you're pushing and pulling, you're tackling, you're catching, you're running, you're throwing, you're kicking. You do all of that in between those two goal lines. But at the end of that goal line, on the other side of the goal line, is an end zone. And the end zone usually has one of the team's names written into the end zone, or really both end zones might have something like Carolina, and the other end zone might have Gamecocks in it, right? So the whole point is the end zone is painted and is clearly identifiable to every player that when they get into the end zone, they know that they are in the end zone. There is a detailed picture of what the end zone looks like. It's painted differently than the rest of the field. So I'm telling you, you have to start with a vision that is a detailed mental picture of a desired future. Detailed picture. But because this is a team picture, here's what I want you to know, that you cannot create this detailed mental picture all by yourself. You need to have your team involved in that. So here's what I want you to do before the month of January is over. Before the beginning of your calendar year, fiscal year, whatever you want to call it, before it is over in that first month, I want you to organize a vision session with your team. Organize a vision session with your team. Now, here's what you do in that vision session. This is going to be real short and sweet because I usually do this over 2 days or a day and a half with my clients. I do an executive retreat with them to set that detailed mental picture of their desired future. And so I know I can't do it for you in this full, live here in less than 15 minutes, but I want to give you some sense of how do you get to the vision. So here's how you get to the vision. I want you to write on the board, or don't write on the board. Just say this to your team. Say, our national trade publication, whatever industry you're in, let's say you're in healthcare. Modern Healthcare is coming to our company to do a story about us. And they have given us the opportunity to write the headline of that story. What is our headline of how we described what our year was like to help us to be so successful that we're on the cover of our national trade publication? What is the headline? So you want to ask your team to write the headline of what success looks like, so much of a success that the national trade publication for your industry is coming to interview you, and they're allowing you to write the headline. That is the detailed mental picture. Now, let me give you a little bit more detail. The second question you need to ask your team is that whatever headline you come up with, what are 3 key metrics in that story that would make that headline to be true? So let me give you an example. Let's say your headline is the #1 cancer hospital in America. Okay. If that is the headline, we're the #1 cancer hospital in America. Well, the 3 metrics that could be underneath that: we saw more patients than any other hospital in America. We had more healthy patient outcomes than any other hospital. And number 3, that we had some groundbreaking research happen at our hospital system. Those would be 3 metrics. But let's say you're not in healthcare. Let's say you're in banking. To be the #1 customer service a bank in America, meaning that you got better customer service than anyone else. So what are the 3 metrics underneath? 3 metrics underneath is that our time to answer the phone was less than 3 seconds for every person that called. That when someone walked into one of our branches, they were in line for less than 3 minutes because we were able to handle their transactions quickly. Or that our wait time in line before you got to a teller was less than 1 minute. Those could be some metrics. But the key here is you have to do this with your team. So I'm telling you right now, as to host a vision session, ask them to come up with the headline. Ask them to come up with the metrics are in their headline. And that is how you begin to set a vision that is inclusive of your team. That's the first thing I want you to do, is start with vision. Now, the second thing you need to do as a leader, if you want to have great alignment for maximum impact on your team, is that you have to be vigilant and proactive on communications and transparency. So when I say you have to be vigilant on communications and transparency, it's easy to come up with a vision and then say, hell, our vision is to win the game. I'm going to use a sports analogy again. Our vision is to win the game and to beat this team. And you come up with 3 metrics, which is we're going to win the kicking game. And that means we're not going to have any mistakes in the kicking game. And the second thing is we're going to win the turnover battle. We're going to get more turnovers from them than they get for us. And the third thing is we're going to have more third down conversions than everybody else. Now, I know I lost some of you because you don't know football, but those would be 3 good metrics to determine how you're going to win the game. That would be your vision. Now, here's the important part about communication is that if you just give people the vision and think that they're going to go and execute it without coaching, counseling, communication, without calling the plays in, without showing them the playbook, without making sure that they understand what the plays that you expect them to be run, you won't be successful. So I'm telling you, as a leader, you're going to have to communicate repeatedly over and over and over again about what the vision are. And you need to be transparent about whether people are on track or off track. You need to be transparent about things that might be changing in business, because you can set a vision in January and by June, you could have a major disruption to your industry. A major disruption. As a matter of fact, you're likely to have a major disruption because nothing ever stays the same in business or in organizations. Everybody has a disruption. There's something's going to happen. And so you got to communicate and be transparent. So what do you need to do? You need to regularly schedule check-ins with your team. You need to have a huddle, because on a football team, you know what we do? We check in via huddle. So when the offense is on the field, they huddle up and they call a new play. They adjust to the circumstances. They adjust to the environment. And in healthcare, you adjust and have a huddle every day about the patients. So in your industry, you need to be having a regular check-in and a huddle about the vision. Be proactive in your communication. Be proactive in your transparency. Transparency breeds trust. So the second thing that you need to do if you want to have maximum impact is you got to huddle up You got to have some check-ins. You got to remain transparent. You got to communicate. In football, one of the things we always see on the field and we never know what it is that they use this coded language when everybody's communicating. The quarterback is pointing at the Mike linebacker. The center is pointing at the Mike linebacker. They're calling out calls to the left and right because they're telling everybody what to do. They're communicating. They're being transparent about what's coming and what we need to do to be successful. You have to do those things. That's your job as a leader. The second thing is that proactive communication and transparency. Now, here's the third thing. The third thing that you need to do, in addition to aligning your team with a great vision and being proactive with your communications, the third thing is you need to empower your team to execute on that vision. So how do you empower your team to execute on that vision? Well, you have to give them ownership of it, because you can come up with a detailed mental picture, set those 3 big goals, but are you giving them ownership over execution of those goals? So how do you give your team ownership? Well, you got to set the objectives with your team, or more specifically, I would say let the team set the objectives. So maybe in that vision session, you come up with the detailed mental picture. I want us to be the number one organization in our industry above all of our competitors. And then you say to your team, you guys tell me which 3 metrics we should come up with to measure whether we're the number one organization in our industry. Set some benchmarks around it. Let them do that. And then say, okay, what would be our quarterly objectives in order to make those benchmarks come to fruition? Have them write them down. Have them decide what those objectives are. You guide them towards them. You give them some insights that they may not have. Be transparent about what's going on at the boardroom, what's going on in the C-suite, what's going on in the industry. Be transparent with them because they may not have that level of insight, but give it to them and let them set the objectives. Because if you expect to hold them accountable to the objectives, it'd be good for them to have some input. Because the worst thing you can do is to give people objectives that they have no ownership in, that they didn't get a chance to help set, that you made it up pie in the sky out of the top of your dome and was like, hey, I'm going ahead and go set these objectives and y'all just got to achieve them, without giving them a chance to say, you know what, boss, these things ain't realistic. Ain't no way in the world we can do it. You know what we are right now? You know, we short staffed. You know, we can't get people hired fast enough. You know, Bob is, and I say Bob, let's say Billy Bob is the toxic leader over your most important division. And you just set a metric to achieve success by Billy Bob's division, but yeah, he's toxic and he got a 50% turnover rate. So that's why you got to talk to your team and let them have ownership, empower ownership over them for setting the objectives. That's a smart way to set goals, to align goals in 2025. If you want your team to achieve success, you literally got to let them help you set the goals and the objectives. That's what you got to do. That's the third thing. Okay, so now here's the fourth thing. This is really important. Might be the most important one. Because once you start with a vision, that's number one, you get clear about that detailed mental picture of that desired future state that you want. Number two, once you have been proactive at communicating with your team and being transparent with your team. And thirdly, once you have empowered ownership in your team to execute on those objectives, you need to do the fourth thing, which is make sure that you invest in leadership development and that your team is trained to execute. Because you don't want to be the leader that assumes that your people have all of the knowledge and the skills that they need in order to execute on the vision. Because the skills that they had yesterday or the skills that they had last year may not be the skills that are required to go to that next level. As a matter of fact, I'm going to assume that they're not, because if you have a growth vision and you have a business growth strategy, you got to have some business growth leadership development in your team and your organization. You got to make sure people are growing. And I'm not talking about just tactical skills either. I'm talking about helping them to be better leaders, because everybody on your team should see themselves as a leader. But if you treat them as a frontline staff assistant, they're only as good to do what you say to do, you're already losing. You're already going to lose. So you got to understand that the job has to be focused on how you help your team to grow in real time. That means you got to invest in leadership development. And so what I need you to do, if you really want to invest in leadership development and grow your people, is that you need to bring me in. And when I say bring me in, I'm talking about hire me to come and lead an executive retreat for your team, or maybe just do a leadership meeting. Like I had a great client last year who was preparing for their new year. And so they made a decision that they didn't want to wait until January to prepare. So they did a leadership retreat in the fall and brought me in as a keynote speaker for their leadership retreat. They had 150 leaders in the room, all of them ready to go to the next level. They had set their vision for 2025, which is the year of their people. They wanted to focus on retaining their top talent, lowering their first year turnover rate, recruiting the right talent into the organization so they could be successful. They were focused on their people. So they didn't wait until next year. They brought me in because they know I'm a human capital expert that can teach leaders how to identify the top talent, how to retain the top talent, how to speak life into the leaders on your team, and how to lead in a way that makes them want to stay engaged and not quit in 1 year. So if I can do that for them in the fall, I'm telling you right now, you might be a little bit behind the 8 ball, but as long as we get this in the first quarter and set your intentions in that way to develop your people to be the leaders that they need to be in order to execute on those objectives, in order to be able to continue to communicate and to execute on that vision, you should consider bringing me in. So in the description of this video, I put a link to contact me. It's simple. You can go to antongunn.com/contact. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO or if you're just the leader of your team. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a senior official in order for me to have a conversation with you around how I come to your organization to help you to get things ready for 2025 and to execute in 2025. So that's it. You got to invest in leadership development. Those are 4 things that I need you to do, and I'm pretty much done here. You need to start with a good vision. Number 2, you need to be proactive with communications and transparency with your team. Number 3, you need to empower ownership by having them involved in the goal-setting process. And number 4, you need to invest in leadership development. That is how you're going to align your team for maximum impact in 2025. And if I can be helpful to you, please make sure you contact me, antongunn.com/contact. That's my website. Or if you want to just shoot me a direct message, you can leave a comment if you want help there. Either way, I'll see them all. That doesn't matter where they are. And if you really want to align yourself, make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn, because that's where I spend most of my time. That's where I spend helping and serving leaders the most. In any other platform, I'm just giving this to you for free because I want to add value. But LinkedIn is where I'm at and where you need to be, because that's where the leaders are focused on growing their teams. So I want to thank you for watching this episode of Leadership Live. It's 2025, a new year, a great opportunity for you to jumpstart things. And you want to set goals with maximum impact. You have to do it with your team. And I just gave you 4 things that you need to do to get them done. Have a fantastic day.